Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 2 Point Conversion Monday night pregame show for a Monday night doubleheader. So we're on a half hour earlier because there's two games tonight. We've got the Jaguars and the Bills. We've got Bengals and the Commanders. We've got Gladys Louise Tyler co-hosting with me. How you doing, Gladys?
3-0, baby. 3-0.
Justin Fields is 3-0. I love it. You cannot imagine how happy I am. If you had to tell me I had to pick one of the Steelers being 3-0 or the Packers being 3-0, I probably would take the Steelers being 3-0 just so Justin Fields could rub it in everyone's face that he's a good quarterback and the Bears have messed up bad.
Waldron.
As a Packers fan, pretty happy to see the Bears just colossally fail over and over again, so it's fine. It's great. Everything's better here. Joining us, the Jaguars are playing tonight, so I figured I'd get a Jaguars fan on. Dylan Schmittler from the Big D Sports Podcast has contributed sometimes here for Going for Two Live as well. So, Dylan, welcome to the show. Welcome to the 2-point conversion.
Thank you, Gladys. Thank you, Kyle. And by the way, Kyle, thanks for beating up on the Tennessee Titans.
Hey, don't thank me. Let me get this right. Sam Darnold. That's also 3-0. Very interesting. And Geno Smith, I believe, is 3-0. I think the Seahawks have won all three games.
And some guy named Mahomes. We'll leave it at that.
Well, it's funny. It's a lot of the New York Jets rejected quarterbacks. Like whether it's they had Geno, they moved on from him. They had Darnold, they moved on from him.
And they
chose Zach Wilson over Justin Fields, which basically seems like an even worse rejection. Guess what? All three of those quarterbacks are 3-0. And I mean, to be fair, the Jets are 2-1. So Aaron Rodgers' era 2.0 is off to a good start so far.
And Tim Boyer played for the Dolphins yesterday when Skylar Thompson was hurt.
Yeah, there's worse things to happen. I mean, I do wonder. I mean, I guess how do you feel about it? But I kind of get the sense Tyler Huntley just gives them the best chance to win. So as soon as he's ready to go, I imagine he's going to start.
Yeah,
probably the rest of the way until 2 is back. I don't know. That's the sense I get.
Unless the Dolphins trade for a quarterback.
If it's all season, does Tannehill come back to Miami? Full circle. Tannehill back with the Dolphins. That would be kind of a poetic thing.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill revenge game against the Titans.
Oh. I mean, to be fair, that is the team that's given him the most money, so I don't know how much revenge he wants on them. If anything, it's the opposite. Like, dude, we paid you this money, and you lost to be fair, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, and Mahomes. Some good quarterbacks you lost to, but still, we paid you to win those games needed. So, sorry, Tannehill. I like Tannehill. But, yeah. And apparently no one else does because he doesn't have a job yet. So, because we have two games tonight, might as well just get right to the props, I suppose. Check to see who's in the chat here. And if you would like to join the chat, be sure to join us live on YouTube. Going for Two Live is the name of the channel, so check it out. We're here. We're also on Twitch, Facebook. Be tweeting some things out. Give me a chance. I'll tweet out the link soon. So if anyone following on Twitter at Senra says, feel free to join as well. But yeah, we've got Jamie in the chat. Double the fun. And I guess extra co-host as well with Dylan joining us tonight. And yeah, Jamie's happy with that in that regard. Jamie does probably more best ball drafts than Dylan does.
Hey, by the way, Jamie, do you want Jameis Winston to start next week?
That's a good question. Gladys, how do you feel about that? Do you think the Browns should turn to Jameis Winston this early in the season?
Yeah, I think they should pull a Carolina Panthers and just sit him. He's not helping them at all.
Wow, Deshaun Watson just got compared to Bryce Young. That's how far he's fallen. It wasn't that long ago he was being compared to Patrick Mahomes, and now we're comparing him to Bryce Young.
I think it was a little while ago he was being compared to Patrick Mahomes.
But it happened though. At one point, it was like, man, he might be the second or third best quarterback in the league, and because at that point all the other good ones were Brady, Rodgers, all the old dudes, and it's like, man, the two good young guys are Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, and then that one playoff game. Remember him air guitaring when they're up 24-0?
Yeah.
And then like a quarter later, it started a descent that has not ended, and it's just gotten progressively worse and worse. It couldn't possibly get worse. Now, you couldn't possibly get a worse person perhaps playing in the NFL, so that downfall might be deserved. But it's fascinating from that sense, just to like how the extremes of NFL quarterbacking, how things like routine and rhythm and missing a whole season, how that can really affect, and missing a season and a half really. Knew this was coming. I assume there's going to be a fantasy cheat sheet segment as well on this tomorrow night on the Going for Two Live Network, Tuesdays at 7:30 Eastern. Or sorry, 7:30 Mountain, 9:30 Eastern. You see, Gladys, I already went to the Mountain first. Gladys is getting to me. He will convince me to start everything at Mountain time.
Mountain should be first all the time.
Mountain. Hey, live high in the mountains, right? Who was the Bears' best RB this week? Some guy named Roshan Johnson. Okay, Dylan, you made a point about the idiocy of some head coaches, right? And I mean, Eberflus and Shane Waldron combined for I think two of the stupidest decisions I've ever seen in a football game. So, who wants to rant about the Bears before we get to the games tonight? Because I definitely do, and talk about how bad the Bears are. How they ruined Justin Fields to the benefit of the Steelers, who don't have to trot out Russell Wilson. They instead have a quarterback that's won 3 games.
Well,
so who wants to start? Okay, Dylan, go ahead.
You guys, both of you know this, but guess how many 4,000-yard passes the Bears have? 0. None. You know why? Because the Chicago Bears think of this like it's 1920. It's 2024. Yes, it's okay to win defense once in a while, but guess what? Guess what? It's time to graduate from pre-K into a PhD program. This is not kindergarten. This is the National Football League. And the Chicago Bears still don't know defense. You hire, if not the second worst coordinator with Nathaniel Hackett, with probably the worst coordinator in football. You kept a buffoon and Matt Eberflus. The Bears wasted Mitchell Trubisky, Justin Fields, and now Caleb Williams is getting his brains beaten. The Chicago Bears don't have a running game. DeAndre Swift has gone nowhere right now. The Bears' offensive line, which actually looked halfway decent toward the end of last year, has been awful. Awful. I mean, heck, I don't know about you. Roshan Johnson might be the Bears' best running back right now, which isn't saying much. DJ Moore's running wind sprints. Rome Odunze's great, but I mean, Keenan Allen's hurt, but that's what happens when you get a 57-year-old running back. The Chicago Bears, and by the way, the Indianapolis Colts gave up 9 million rushing yards the first couple weeks, and yet Caleb Williams threw the ball, 52, 53 times yesterday. You know what? The late inning screen.
3 stupid decisions. The game plan was a failure right from the start. There's 2 in-game.
The late inning screen said after a famous Monday night game, the Bears are who we thought they were, and that's why we took the bleeping field. Now, if you want to crown them, crown their bleeps.
I'll crown them king of doo-doo, because that's what all the Bears can rule. Okay, so actually, before we continue with the rant, let's get this out of the way. Jamie wanted Jameis Winston to start week 1, so of course he wants him to start now. So, well, I'm sure Jamie will have lots of rants. There'll be a ton of rants tomorrow night. But Gladys, do you have a Chicago Bears rant or anything about Eberflus, Waldron, or any of the ineptitude of the Bears organization that's permeated basically since 1987?
No. I think the ineptitude of their decisions is magnified by just Justin Fields. Just Justin Fields play with the Steelers. Justin Fields talking with the Steelers, talking about how he feels more comfortable in the offense, how he doesn't feel like he has to do everything, how he's not rushed. I think that they're going to just ruin Caleb Williams. It's just going to be bad until they figure it out, and I don't think they're going to figure it out anytime soon.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's unfortunate, but I'm a Packers fan, so I love seeing the Bears at dysfunction. But as Dylan pointed out, the game plan itself wasn't great. Now, I will say the Colts' run defense kind of made an adjustment during the Packers game, and if you notice, the second half, the Packers weren't able to run as easily. So the Colts now what's happening is basically the Colts, in order to stop the run, they need 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. They basically have to play a 5-man defensive front, basically back like it's 1940, which is even, I guess the Colts weren't even a team then, which is hilarious. But that's basically what they have to do, because otherwise, especially now that DeForest Buckner's hurt, they can't stop the run with a 4-man front. So what you're basically sacrificing the linebacker and secondary level is an extra player. You can only play with 6 guys back there. So it is making coverages different. And I didn't watch that much of the game, but if I could see the situation where if the Colts made that 5-man front, the premier like defensive formation for the whole game, it would be tempting to maybe say, okay, Caleb, this is a good game for you to go out and throw a ton of passes because you're only doing it against 6 players in coverage. So I could maybe understand that. And that's why I think, to me, magnifies the in-game decision-making. This goes, there correlates the amount of Roschon Johnson and stupidity as well, apparently. So, and I was tracking, do my goal line guide article. So I track every play from inside the 5 for every team each week. I look at offensive and defensive efficiency, allowing touchdowns. On 4th and 1 from the 5-yard line, so it counted as a goal line carry technically in my goal line guide for looking at plays from 5 yards out. It was 4th and 1. They gave it to Roschon Johnson, and he gained the first down. So then that set up 1st and goal from the 4-yard line. The Bears turned it over on downs, running 4 straight plays, or 3, and they kicked a field goal, whatever it was, with Khalil Herbert and DeAndre Swift. They literally just had your guy get the short yardage play in Roschon, and then they go within short yardage offense and don't hand him the ball a single time, give it to the other 2 guys, and I think they combined for negative 10 yards on those 2 plays, or those 3 plays. Most of that came on a really poor play design. DeAndre Swift toss out from, I think, 4th and 2 or 3rd and 2, like 3rd and goal from the 2. And they tossed it back to him at like the 5-6 yard line, and he had to go backwards. And it was a complete disaster. It's like, you just had your guy get the short yardage play with Roschon. Why not keep going with him, to Jamie's point of him being the best guy out there? And the plays worked, but then what didn't work is they didn't use him the whole time, and stuff didn't work. So that was awful. But man, when they scored the touchdown, and with like a minute, was it over 2 minutes? I can't remember, but it was right around the 2. I think it was after the 2-minute warning. It was like a minute 40 left with 1 timeout. Instead of trying the onside kick, they punt it deep, and the Colts get a first down pretty easily, and it's game over. Like, to me, that was inexcusable. I know people talk about that, like Antonio Pierce did something like that, and it was like 7 minutes left. This is the final 2 minutes, and you have 1 timeout. How like, I'm shocked Eberflus even has a job today. That's how bad of a decision that was. Probably the worst coaching decision we have seen yet this year, and may very well see all season. So, sorry, Caleb Williams. You got drafted by the 2nd worst team in the league, but the very worst spot to develop a quarterback.
Well, I think that you normalize inefficiency and people being ineffective, and Eberflus is pretty much the poster child for that. And the Bears are, like, that they didn't get rid of him last year and let him retain the position shows that, you know, they have normalized his ineffectiveness. And the fact that you give DeAndre Swift a contract, DeAndre Swift has never been a good runner between the tackles. He's averaging like 1.8 yards per carry this year, 3 games. And you're still giving him the ball when Roschon's averaging like at least 4.1 yards in the game that you decide to play him. It's like it's the Deshaun Watson thing all over again. We paid him, so we have to play him. And that's ridiculous. He's not helping your team.
It's not like they're using Swift in the best way possible, because his best skill set is as a receiving back. Not the ball.
Running between the lines.
They've barely thrown him any targets. He went out the whole first game without a single target. You get this. You pay this guy, and his best skill set you don't feature at the very first chance at all that you get with him. It's both. Like, Eberflus is clearly, the in-game decision making is clearly not a good head coach. He's also not putting good offensive coordinators and not making good hires. His first tenure with the Bears, like his very first year as head coach. So I think it was 2nd year of Justin Fields. Because guess what? The Bears did this last time too. They hung on to, I was going to say Matt Patricia, but it's not as bad. But it's still, I can't remember who it was. It's current Chiefs offensive coordinator. But anyway, they had him for a year of like Fields, rookie season. It didn't go well. Then they hired Eberflus. Eberflus hired Luke Getsy as offensive coordinator, first-time play caller. The defensive coordinator was a first-time defensive play caller. Every person they hired, they promoted up so that no one on the staff was doing a job they had ever done before. So the entire coaching staff were learning new positions all at the same time. Just nonsense of how, like, the worst way you could possibly build a coaching staff. For a rookie head coach like Eberflus, he needed to do the opposite and get experienced coordinators who've already called plays. So they're not learning how to do that while you're learning how to be a head coach. It was doomed to fail the entire time. So yeah, it looks like it's the same.
I think it also hurts that you have coaches that are O'Connell and LaFleur that are just doing impossible things with players that you don't think they should be doing impossible things with. You know what I mean? Like, you have these guys that are making exemplary play calling decisions, and then you have Eberflus, and you have Getsy with Antonio Pierce. I mean, it's mind-boggling, the disparity in not only the players, but in the coaching and the offensive coordinators that's going on this season.
And so actually bring up a comment here by Jamie. I guess, do you all agree with this, that Eberflus will be the first head coach fired? Dylan, do you agree with Jamie's assessment?
I thought it would have been the guy in New Orleans, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
It might be Doug Peterson if they lose tonight.
Oh gosh!
Oh yeah. Sorry,
no.
sorry, Dylan.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you this, Gladys. Jax might be 0-2, but Trevor Lawrence is 2-0 against Josh Allen. And tonight, after tonight, I hope it's 3-0.
Yes, we'll find out soon. That's almost a perfect transition, but I did want to follow up on what Gladys was saying to maybe again make pro Packers propaganda here. But when asked about the game plan over the last 2 weeks, Matt LaFleur really downplays what he did. He's like, I didn't really change much. You know, I'm called more run heavy than I would before. You know, we saw, I think one thing that happened in the Colts game, the outside running was working so well. I don't know if that was originally part of the game plan. They just kept going to it, and so it adjusted well in the game. But he basically puts all the credit on Willis. Like, he's done all the work. He's made himself ready in such a short time. So even like I think we can all give LaFleur a ton of credit. He's over there giving Willis all the credit, saying that he's the guy that got ready for this. Like, I just kept the game plan pretty much the same. Like, it sounded like he didn't really change any of the plays at all. I think
what makes him a better coach too. Like, he's not Sean Payton. He's not saying, "Oh, it's all me," even though everyone knows that it's his play calling. He's pushing up his players. I mean,
yeah.
I
think LaFleur adjusted how he called plays in the game, but he didn't change any of the play designs in the playbook. Like, they just kept learning like they were every week as if it wasn't. And then, like, in the games, that's where he's going to make the adjustments as what plays are being selected. So, yeah, maybe early candidate for Coach of the Year. Certainly Kevin O'Connell, maybe even Dan Campbell, like NFC North Coach of the Year. I'm all for it this year. I think all three could be deserved. But yeah, Jamie's right. Let's talk Monday Night Football. And the first game is, as Dylan mentioned, the Jaguars versus the Bills. So Gladys, correct me if I'm wrong with the underdog fantasy updated lines, but this is what I saw was Bills by 4.5 with a higher lower of 46.5 points combined.
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess we'll start there. Gladys, would you like to begin? Would you like me to start? How do you want to approach this?
I'm going. What am I going? I'm going over 46.5 points with the Bills giving the 4.5. I think they'll win by a touchdown.
Yeah, one of the things I'm going to start incorporating to try and get better, because as we know, last year I was so bad at the lines, I had to, by your standards, cheat and listen to Chris Robin on the Fantasy Six Pack and pick based on what he was saying. And then it worked because Chris is really smart, so that actually worked and helped me catch up. But ultimately, I'm going to not go by that this year. And instead, I'm going to go with something. I was listening to the Warren Sharp podcast through the offseason. He was talking about rest edge and how this year, as getting football on Wednesday and all these get the best teams in prime time, the NFL schedule is getting a bigger disparity of rest edge than it ever has. Teams are spending short weeks versus teams that have had a lot of rest. And so if I can find a rest edge on these Monday nights, I think I'm going to start going after that. And the Bills is one of those. They played on Thursday. So it's not quite 2 weeks, but they're at like 10 days since their last game. While the Jaguars, they played last Sunday. It's an extra 3-4 days. But for a line of only 4.5, I think that definitely makes me want to go with the Bills. So when I took that rest edge and saw this line combined of all the 6 decisions to make this week, I think that was the easiest for me, was to go with the Bills by 4.5. Sorry, Dylan, that we talked so bad about the Jags there, but do you want to chime in at all on that point spread of the Jags?
To be honest with you, it's not the best line. I think we got a -5.5, 6, but I might be biased, but I think I'm going the Jaguars all the way tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jags win the game outright. I mean, Jackson's 2-0 against Josh Allen straight up. Yes, Buffalo's coming off a Thursday night game, but here's what I would also say. Look who the Bills play next Sunday night in the Baltimore Ravens. And Buffalo played darn near a perfect game against Miami. Can the Bills play 2 perfect games in a row? I mean, we saw the 49ers play a perfect game against the Jets and then lay a stinker against the Vikings. Plus, I mean, this game on Week 13, the weather being an advantage, as you know, Kyle, the weather is such a big advantage whether you play down south early in the year, up north late in the year. Well, the weather won't be a deterrent tonight. And Jacksonville's been unlucky. I mean, Cleveland was 4 for 4 on 4th down last week. The Jaguars have put together big plays. I think Jacksonville's got like 12, 20-yard plays. I think tonight the Jaguars figure out their red zone issues and put some points on the ball and not kicking field goals. I don't want to see the field goal kicker. I don't want to see
just for point afters. No 3-point kicks. 1-point kicks.
Yes.
I was listening to, I think it was the Roto World podcast. Patrick Daugherty, Kyle Dvorchak, and Denny Carter, and one of them mentioned that the Bills are one of the lowest percent of teams in terms of like playing with 2 high safeties. So the big play potential is there. Does this set up a really big game for Gabe Davis as a revenge game against the Bills? In theory, it's the type of defense he would have his best work against.
I think it's a big game for Christian Kirk tonight. I mean, he's been
and you know what? Jamie agrees with you. Sorry, Dylan, but yeah, go ahead.
The Bills funnel defense to the slot, and Kirk's been Mr. Where have you been lately? Not in a good way, but I don't even know if Christian Benford's out tonight, so the Bills have injuries on defense, and Kirk and Cal really did a lot of work against the Bills in London last year, and I think Kirk could have another big game tonight.
Yeah. Underworld over Roto World. Jamie and I might agree to disagree, I will say. So a couple of Jamie's predictions. One is, again, what you're saying, Dylan, saying that he thinks Christian Kirk tonight. Bills allow 60% of wide receiver points to the slot. So I think he's been Mr. Invisible, as you've pointed out. Like, he's barely done anything. So maybe it's like we have to get him involved because he's done nothing so far. And justify a big contract.
No Evan Ingram, so he'll be the guy in the middle of the field.
A couple more Jamie's Bowl predictions. Keon Coleman gets targeted 4+ times tonight. So at least 4 targets for Keon Coleman. I don't know if that's a prop. But Kincaid will be the highest scoring non-QB. I certainly hope so. I know I've got a league where I think we need Kincaid. It's not much to get 12 points in a half PPR league. Feels like he needs a touchdown. If he can get a touchdown, it's probably good to get those 12 points. If he doesn't, it's going to maybe be really difficult. So hoping he finds the end zone. That's what we're hoping for Kincaid. Now, Gladys, you mentioned you were going higher than 46.5.
Yes.
Well, we know how I do it. It starts with a 4, so take it to the floor. I'm going lower. Just because it's tough to have confidence in the Jags offense being able to truly make this a shootout game too. Sorry, Dylan. Really do think the Bills are. I was going to maybe talk about their demise a little bit. Like, okay, could the Dolphins win the AFC East this year? Yeah, that was my prediction. I thought they would actually, and yeah, that looks like that's going to be wrong. So no, full confidence in the Bills and Bills defense in this case. So yeah, going lower than 46.5 combined points. The lower hit last week. All three of us went lower last week. All three of us went lower 2 weeks ago too. So this is the first time Gladys in I guess suppose 6 chances the last 2 weeks for all three of us combined. This is the first instance where someone is going higher. So this is the game.
What was your prop bet for this one?
Oh, yeah, that. What am I going with? Okay, so it's funny. Just to update the standings, Dan and I are tied now at 2 and 4 because Dan got 2 correct last week. We all picked the lower, so that was one thing we all got right. So for our group consensus picks, we're now 1 and 3 because we also all picked the Eagles by 5.5. And if they didn't mess up the last drive, we all would have got that because they would have won by 6. And instead, they turn it over. They let the Falcons drive the field, score a touchdown, and we lost. There, so that really sucked. Thanks, Eagles defense. And I missed the Bijan Robinson receiving yard total by 1 yard because we changed my original line. I found at 24.5 would have worked, but because we adjusted to 25.5, what we found on Underdog during the show, he got 25. So that literally made the difference. That's unfortunate. So yeah, looking to rebound in the prop standpoint, I'm going with another running back prop. But this time, not going running back receiving yards. I'm going to take James Cook higher than 14.5 rush attempts. Part of this stems from
what? 14.5 rushing attempts?
Yes.
Okay.
He's going to get 15 or more carries. In the 9 games in the regular season, since Ken Dorsey's been fired and Joe Barry's taken over, 6 of those games he's gotten at least 15 carries. And 3 of them he hasn't. So with that number, that seems like to me that kind of favors him. Another heavy James Cook game script. I feel like that's kind of been the case early in the season. Eventually, Ray Davis, I think, will become more part of the offense. But I feel like early in the season, they're trying to rack up these wins. They're going to go with the guy they know. So I think they lean on James Cook. I kind of liked. It was tempting to go with receiving yards again because I saw his receiving yards at only 17.5.
So on Underdog, it's 15, right?
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, Underdog, it's 15 rushing attempts.
See, I thought I looked on Underdog and saw it. Maybe it's changed. To be fair, I looked like this afternoon, so maybe it's changed since.
Maybe.
So yeah.
So
okay.
14.5 is what you're going with over.
Well, I mean, if it's now 15, I'm willing to adjust to that. Yeah.
No, I mean you should take it at what you originally saw.
All right, fair enough. So 14.5.
Okay.
He's going to get exactly 15 carries and mess it up if I don't take it. So yeah. Yeah, 14.5 rush attempts for James Cook. So that's my Bills prop. So I'm running through running back props with Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, James Cook, all guys we'd love to have in fantasy. So here we go.
All right, I've got a prop over Christian Kirk receiving yards tonight.
Okay, what is it set at? Does anyone know?
I have no idea what it is. I have no
His
idea.
receiving yards are 47.5.
I think Christian Kirk is due.
I'm sorry, what?
I think Christian Kirk is due. I think he caught like 70-something yards in this game last year, and I think he could have another big game, 5, 6, 4, 70, 80 yards easy.
So over 47.5 is what you're going with. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's fair. I guess. I have what?
Well, no, you go ahead, Glass. I'll quickly chime in. There was another receiving yards for Jags I was interested in. It was Gabe Davis at 39.5. But I think either of those does seem tempting because it feels like the Jags are going to have to, they're the underdog team. We anticipate them having to throw a lot of pass attempts. So
yeah,
I think enough production that I kind of like either of those. But clearly Dylan and it seems like Jamie also favor that Christian Kirk. But go ahead, Gladys.
I have Dalton Kincaid over 3.5 receptions.
Can somebody figure out why the tight ends can't catch a bleeping cold in Alaska this year?
I don't know. Dallas Goedert killed it yesterday. killed it. I was 1 week.
Unfortunately, he didn't kill it for you last week.
1 week behind. One
Yeah.
week. I needed him to do that last week.
So,
No, he wakes.
so everyone start Dalton Kincaid for sure in week 4 because Gladys is
Exactly.
here. Dan has joined us, and you know what? He's broken the spell of unanimous team picks here. All of us took the Jets as 3-point underdogs in week 1, and the 49ers more than covered that spread. And then, we took the Eagles as 5.5-point favorites, and they lost. So all 3 of us were unanimous for 2 weeks in a row, but no more. Jags, 5.5. So he's going with you, Dylan. He agrees that the Jaguars will actually, it's set at 4.5. So we have it at 4.5, Dan. So we'll even give you that just for the no. You want it to be at 5.5, right?
Yeah. So he's going Jags points under. So he's going with you in the under. And Luke Farrell over 5.5 receiving yards. Huh.
Luke Farrell. Interesting that it's Farrell and not Bretton Strange. Tight ends have been awful, Dylan, and everything has been hurt because of it. But what do you think of the Jags' current tight end situation? Dan's pick to go with.
Bretton Strange, second-round pick from Penn State a year and a half ago. It's his time to step up tonight. Next man up.
6 yards. Again, it's one of those, we talked about that before in the past. Not so much this year, but in the past, all he needs is one catch, and he can probably get 6 yards on one catch. So it's just the bet that Luke Farrell will catch a pass in this game, essentially. I can dig it, Dan. And we'll get. He's talking about some of the Bengals Commander stuff too. We'll get to that in a bit here. Talking about Jamie's props. So Jamar Chase over 80.5 receiving yards and a touchdown combined in one parlay. It's at plus 200. Is this the game Chase is due against a Commanders? Oh wait, that's the other game. Damn it, Jamie, you're confusing me. We'll get to that soon. I just want to make sure I've got everything right. So Dan is going lower. Okay, lower on both games. Okay. Interesting. And then, Luke Farrell, 5.5 receiving yards. So, interesting. I guess, is there anything else to say about this matchup that either of you want to talk about?
No, I'm good.
All right. So, I guess, we'll move on to Bengals Commanders. I may as well bring up Dan's picks here. So, he's going Bengals as 7.5-point favorites here. I wonder if it's a bet against the Commanders' defense, I suppose, or just a bet on Joe Burrow. But either way, Dan has that. And again, as you mentioned, lower on both games. And the over/under on both games is 46.5, right? I saw that it was the same. Is that true still?
Okay.
I can assume it is. Right?
Yeah.
Is it 46.5 for both?
Hold, please. No, 45.5 for the second game.
Okay. All right.
1 point less.
Okay. I'm agreeing with Dan, and I will go lower there too. What are your thoughts on that, Gladys? The 45?
I'm giving the Washington. I'm gonna go Washington, but lower. 7 points. Giving Washington 7. Go lower than 45.5.
I'm gonna take Cincinnati to blow out Washington this week. The Commanders' defense been bad. Cincinnati all but beat Kansas City last week. I think the Bengals more than covered the 7.5.
Okay, so once again, Gladys and I on one side, and Dan and Dylan on the other, both going Bengals. Because I agree with you, Gladys. I'm going with Commanders 7.5. No rest edge. And the way I saw it, with these two games happening, decided to look and say, okay, well, the one team that I have the most confidence in is the Bills, and they're not favored by as much as the Bengals are. So to me, it makes the Bills such an easy bet, but it also, I kind of want to bet against the Bengals in that. I think 7.5 is too much. Part of it is my faith in Jaden Daniels, and I'm sure that's part of Gladys's pick as well, because we both have him in fantasy in big matchups. It's funny that I'm involved in both matchups. So go Jaden Daniels. But not 50 points go, Jaden Daniels, and a crushing comeback loss to hand it to me to put me at 0-3 would be pretty bad. I really need that win there. So hoping he goes off, but not like so much that he screws me. I suppose I'd be happy either way, and then Gladys would be able to move on. My team could maybe cement itself as the 101 again. Go get that win. So go Zach Moss. I mean, if Zach Moss scores 2 touchdowns, then I suppose it doesn't matter.
Well, am I playing you in the Dynasty?
FPC Dynasty, yeah. And I know Gladys made the bold stance to take Jaden. Wait, did Caleb go 101 in that draft? I think he did, actually. I can't remember.
In the FPC, yeah, because once his face wanted to trade me for the 101, and I knew I could get Daniels at 102.
Well, I remember I wanted to originally before I traded the 101, and you were like, "Nope, no way, Kyle. Go look somewhere else," and I did. But anyway, so yeah, to Jamie's props for this game, he's going Jamar Chase over 80.5 yards and a touchdown. Okay, yeah, he's making that parlay where he's thinking the Chase breakout gets that touchdown, and then it's plus 200. Also for Dan's prop, he's going with Brian Robinson over 55.5 rushing yards. So Dylan, I'll just ask you, what do you think of Dan's picks? I know you agree with him on the Bengals. Do you like the combined points over under 45.5, and then also this Brian Robinson rushing yard line?
I just wish the Commanders would score touchdowns and not kick so many field goals. I mean, they kicked 7 last week. I mean, I wish I could take over on the Bengals team total, but I honestly think this could. I mean, would 27-17 surprise anyone? No.
No, that's a good point. So you're thinking is actually I forget, Gladys, what did you say? Did you say higher or lower for this 45.5?
I think I said, what did I say on the other one? I said the opposite of what I said on the other one.
You said higher for that one, so lower for this one.
Or on this one, yeah.
Okay, so right now we do have one consensus pick then, in terms of, and actually it's a not just a 3 person consensus, but a 4-person consensus. We're all going lower on this Bengals Washington game at 45.5. Dylan, you pointed out just Washington's inability to finish drives with touchdowns, field goals, that happens a couple times. They don't live up to their end of the projection and get this over.
And if you want a prop, how about over 1.5 Joe Burrow touchdowns tonight?
Ooh, I assume that's the passing touchdown. Would a rushing touchdown count? Is that total touchdown?
Passing touchdown.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. Yeah, it's typically how they go for those. Yeah, that would be 2 touchdowns against this Commanders secondary is great. I can definitely see that happening. Speaking of the Commanders secondary, So I'm trying to bet on a Canadian this week, and there's a couple Canadians in this game. So Gladys, are there any Benjamin Saint-Just prop lines, specifically looking at tackles?
Who am I looking for?
Benjamin Saint-Just. He's a defensive back for the Commanders.
Hold, please.
Okay. While that's happening, just going with some Jamie comments here. So this doesn't relate to any of the games, but saying Dallas Goedert's consistent for production. We talked about he's tight end 1 right now in fantasy. So he's a must play next week, especially with
Jamie, is that because all the other Eagle wide receivers are potentially hurt? I mean, Devontae Smith's in concussion protocol. AJ Brown's coming back from a hamstring.
Yeah. And LOL Kyle High. Yeah. Jamie understands. But so one thing Jamie understands is Dan's love for Brian Robinson this week. So Dan's going higher than 55. I think he said that higher, right? Yeah, Brian Robinson higher than 55 rushing yards. Jamie likes Brian Robinson anytime touchdown. Brian Robinson over 10.5 receiving yards as well. So the Brian Robinson lines are strong for everyone.
Ooh, I found a Benjamin St-Just.
Okay.
3.5 solo tackles, a half assist, a half defensive interception, 4.5 tackles and assists total.
Oh, I'm taking that one because he's gotten 5 and 6 total tackles in the first 2 weeks combined. So for sure, lock me into Benjamin Saint-Just at 4.5 total tackles higher.
Okay.
All right, so going with 3 straight running back props for me to start the year, including a James Cook tonight. But yeah, going with a defensive back prop. So Gladys, what is? I don't think we got your prop yet for Bengals Commanders.
Jaden Daniels higher 9.5 attempts, rushing attempts.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait, let me make sure that's rushing attempts.
There's no way that's pass attempt. They would never give a line that low. That sounds about right. But yeah, double check.
Yep. 9.5 rushing attempts higher for Jaden Daniels.
So, Dylan, any insight, anything you like about either of the lines Gladys and I just shared? Benjamin Saint-Just, 4.5 tackles. Jaden Daniels, 9.5 rush attempts.
I would probably take Jaden Daniels over pass attempts because I think the Commanders are going to have to throw, especially Cincinnati's really good. I wouldn't be surprised. Jaden Daniels, I mean, maybe Jaden Daniels over 0.5 an interception. By the way, no Trenton Irwin tonight, so Jamar Chase might eat up the slot.
I feel like I have Trenton Irwin in the lineup. Let me go take him out. No, I didn't. I didn't put him in. I already put Diami Brown in instead. Good for me. Way to go, Kyle. I also have Jermaine Burton already, so I think I didn't want to go with 2 Bengals receivers that probably won't get anything anyway. So, Dylan, I guess the one thing and actually we can all chime in on this, how much people are loving Brian Robinson. So Dan's going over on the 55.5 rushing yards. Jamie likes the 10.5 receiving yards and the anytime touchdown. And if you want to boost the Brian Robinson receiving yard total to 25.5, you get it at plus 235, whereas the current normal line of 10.5 is minus 120. So if you really believe in Brian Robinson, and maybe Dylan, to your point, the narrative of they'll have to throw more and they'll have to pass the ball a lot more than expected, maybe you really like that Brian Robinson receiving line going up. So anyone want to talk about Brian Robinson?
Yeah, I mean, I think B-Rob's a good option. Gladys, I don't know, but what is Austin Eckler's receiving line tonight?
Oh please, I just went out of that. Austin Eckler is. What am I looking for? His receiving line?
Yes.
Is Higgins playing tonight?
Oh, I guess we should. I mean, it's an hour away, so I'm going to look at the RotoWire inactives right now.
18.5 is Austin Eckler's receiving line.
I'm going over Austin Eckler receiving yards.
And 2.5 receptions. So
actually, probably receptions then.
Yeah.
He's been the leading. I think he leads the Commanders in catches right now.
Somebody throw Terry McLaurin the freaking ball, please.
To answer Gladys's question, T. Higgins is active tonight.
He is active? Okay.
I
just need to change my
apparently Robinson is out-targeted Eckler, even though Eckler has more catches. That's interesting. But clearly it's not just like Robinson's getting receiving yard usage. It's not just all going to Eckler. So, yeah. I don't know. I'm hesitant to bet on the running backs this week in this game. I think.
What was yours for this game?
Benjamin Saint-Just, the defensive corner, with 4.5 total tackles.
We just did that. Okay.
Yeah, go with the Canadian. It was going to be him or Chase Brown, like 10.5 receiving yards. I didn't like that, so but I'm glad that Benjamin Saint-Just line was there. Jamie talked about, okay, so I sold the 101 pick to him, then he sold it to Gator so that he could still get Malik Neighbors, and that's turned out fabulous for Jamie with Malik Neighbors putting up monster performances.
Yeah, who did he get? Malik?
Right? Yeah, he took Malik at 104.
Nice.
Yeah,
Gator traded up to the 101 to get Caleb because he desperately did.
And everybody has wanted Malik Neighbors in my Dynasty League, and I have rebuffed every offer.
That's true. Dylan's kind of shared me some of the offers. I keep telling him, man, like at this point, if you're not being able to like upgrade to a Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like if you can't get to that tier, you may as well just hold. Because anything else is probably, I think now like Marvin and Neighbors they're both top 6 dynasty wide receivers. You could even argue top 5.
And then probably the other ones would be And then the other ones in the top 6 would be what? Jefferson, Chase, Amon-Ra, and CD.
Exactly. So to me, like if a trade for Neighbors now, Dylan, if it doesn't involve one of those other 5 names, it's probably an automatic no. Because especially because you're where you have him, it's a 1 QB league, right?
Yeah.
In that instance, the most sought after assets are those young, elite, productive wide receivers. Like you could make an argument though, if your league was to like redo the draft right now as a startup, that Neighbors would be a top 6 pick in the draft, and like those type of players, you want to make sure you're staying in the top 6, at least in my mind. So if you can find a way to get one of those other players, that makes sense. But other than that, I would just hang on to Malik Neighbors, diamond hand him, as I think the South Harmon boys like to say, like, my cold dead hands you're prying this from. So apparently Jamie wrote about Benjamin Saint-Just in his article this week. So maybe that's a good sign. I could get back on the prop. Man, I'm 1 receiving yard away from going 2 for 2 to start the season. So thanks for that, Bijan. Thanks for that, Kirk Cousins. Joe Burrow, 5 touchdowns because Chase is getting 4 this week. And his justification for that is the Commanders have the worst defense against pass catchers this year, allowing a total of 51.7 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. That's insane. No matter where or who Chase lines up, it's 200 yards and 4 touchdowns tonight for Jamar Chase. So he's putting up QB numbers this week, as Jamie described it. So, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 this week with this game. I ranked him, I think, as wide receiver 3, so wouldn't shock me. And because I do think Benjamin Saint-Just is good, and he's probably is their best defensive back. He would not be able to handle Chase one-on-one very often. So he's the best part of the secondary. And I mean, he's good, but he's not great. And like the rest of the secondary is definitely not good. So, it's funny. Neighbors over Marvin rookie draft suck it because I've seen some people now rank Neighbors ahead of Marvin in dynasty rank, ahead of Marvin Harrison in dynasty ranking. So. Jamie was all about Neighbors 101 in super flex rookie drafts. That was Jamie's whole thing. So, Jamie, you benefit. Dylan, you benefit. I ended up trading away Brock Bowers to get Malik Neighbors. So, he was the prospect I really wanted. Gave up, what was it? I think it was Bowers and Rashad White for Neighbors and Chase Brown. And I mean, the running backs seem almost irrelevant. So I mean, at least I've got the younger guy, and he's the Canadian, but he's really not. Like, I don't think I have him in the lineup this week, but I got Neighbors, so it's all worth it, I suppose. We'll see. Bowers might be the dynasty tight end 1 though now too. So my co-host Brad Harvin is probably still happy with that trade. I'll have to revisit with him on the Full Press Fantasy Pod this week. But we got 7 minutes before kickoff the Jags Bills game. So want to revisit all our picks here before we get out of here?
Okay.
So, Gladys and I in the Jaguars Bills game, which features the Bills as home favorites by 4.5 points and a 46.5 combined higher lower. Gladys, you and I are lockstep on the team. We both took the Bills as 4.5 point favorites, whereas Dan's taking them as underdogs. Dylan, you agree with Dan and going with your Jaguars to not only not allow the Bills to cover the spread, but actually outright win. So I'm sure. Actually, Jamie chimed in on that. If you think the Jaguars are a good money line bet this week, I'm sure that there's a lot of plus money on just taking the Jaguars straight up to win. So that one's there. Dan and I both agreed on the lower of 46.5 points. Gladys, you went higher though. So far, the only time in the first 3 weeks that someone has taken a higher, and to be fair, Gladys, you've done it on the highest higher lower so far this year. You've had 42.5 in the Jets 49ers game, 45.5 last week, and then the second game this week is also 45.5. So you're taking the higher on the highest higher lower we've seen. So is that strategic? Is that you think they've raised that line, but they still haven't set it high enough?
I think that in order for the Jags to win, it will have to go higher, or for the Jags to keep it close, it will have to go higher. That both teams will be scoring lots of points. It won't be a defensive battle. And like the Philly game yesterday. So, yeah, that's my rationale.
Actually, Dylan, I can't remember if we asked you about that. What you thought about that game's higher, lower, 46.5.
Part of me think,
Do it.
Dan and I are
okay.
saying lower, so
Over.
Gladys is,
Over.
leaving her alone.
Higher? So you're going higher?
Yeah.
All right, so there you go, Gladys. You've convinced Dylan. Now, in addition to Gladys and I both picking Bills to cover the spread, we also both picked Bills player props. So you have tight end Dalton Kincaid getting higher than 3.5 catches, whereas I have James Cook getting more than 14.5 rush attempts. So A, that Kincaid will get all those opportunities and those receptions, and B, that James Cook will be featured on the ground. Dan, meanwhile, is going with a Jaguars prop. The backup tight end, Luke Farrell, getting 5.5 receiving yards. So higher than 5.5 receiving yards. So, yeah, Dylan, did you want to chime in one last time on any of those player props? Kincaid, 3.5 catches. Cook on the 15 rush attempts. Or Luke Farrell on just 5.5 receiving yards. Can get it with just a 6-yard catch. He wins.
Not the worst idea, right?
One play, make it work. We talked a lot about that last year. Haven't lived the concept too much. Heck, with the way Gabe Davis plays, his line of 39.5 receiving yards, he could get that with one play. He can get a 40-yard catch.
You know what's going to happen? Luke Farrell will catch a 5-yard touchdown pass just to annoy all of us.
And that'll be his only catch all game. So Dan will miss out by half a yard. Yeah. So now we're gonna just reveal our picks, or revisit our picks for the Commanders at Bengals game, which features Cincinnati as 7.5-point home favorites and I forgot to change it, a 45.5 higher lower. So our only unanimous group pick of the week. All of us are going lower on this 45.5. So that's one thing that all four of us, because Dylan agreed with us there as well, but Gladys, Dan, and I are all taking the lower there, like we did last week with the Falcons Eagles, and that worked. That paid off. That was also 45.5. So funny enough. So we're hoping to revisit that magic and get us all correct, and maybe get the group picks a little closer to 500 right now. 1 and 3 is our only unanimous pick that's actually worked, because the other 3 we got wrong. So there's that, and then once again, for the team spreads, it's Gladys and I versus Dylan and Dan. Gladys and I were taking the Commanders as 7.5-point underdogs, whereas Dylan, you agree with Dan, going with the Bengals as favorites.
Unlike the rest of these knuckleheads, my eliminator is playing tonight, and that'd be the Bengals.
Oh, were they your survivor pool pick?
Yep.
Yeah, I was I avoided the Bengals week 1. I took the Bills. That actually looked a little scary when the Cardinals were up. Then I totally messed it up by taking the Ravens week 2 against the Raiders.
I took Seattle week 1 and the Chargers week 2.
Yep, I almost took the Chargers. I almost changed it, and I should have, but no, went with the Ravens. There's no way the Ravens will lose at home to the Raiders. They in fact did. So once again, I've done a half dozen survivor pools, Dylan. I have never made it past week 3 ever, not even once. I remember. Gladys, you'll remember this game where the Steelers lost to Mitch Trubisky Bears. It was 2017, because the whole Kaepernick kneeling thing was happening. And I think it was the tackle Villanueva, who was an armed force member. He went out for the anthem. He was the only player to do it, and everyone else stayed in the locker room. It was really confusing. And it seemed like the Steelers, discombobulated them all game, and they somehow lost to the Bears. That's how I lost I think it was my first survivor pool in week 3. And I've never been able to even get back there again and even get to week 3 oftentimes. In this case, another failure attempt. But hopefully the props go better. Funny enough, while we all might have to ask us who we think is going to win, I think we'd all say the Bengals will win. All of us are going with Commander players props. I mean, Jamie pointed out some Chase props, but Gladys is going with the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, 9.5 rushing attempts. You're going higher, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so far none of us have taken a prop lower yet. All 12 prop picks so far through 3 weeks have been higher on a prop, and so far through 2 weeks we were 2 and 4 on props, so that's the best strategy. But yeah, we're doing it again. So Jaden Daniels, 9.5 rush attempts. Gladys's pick. I'm going with the defensive back, the cornerback, Benjamin Saint-Just, Canadian, going with 4.5 tackles, total tackles combined, higher. And Dan's taking the running back, Brian Robinson, 55.5 rushing yards, higher. And yeah, it's 7:30. Jags Bills about to kick off. So, Dylan, want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the 2-point conversion. Something we're going to hope to have happen, folks, is guests coming on in the future. But thanks for helping us start this tradition this year, Dylan.
No, thank you for having me, Colin and Gladys, and hopefully Duval County will represent very well Monday night. Although I'm kind of bummed we don't have Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on our game. We've got the other crew, but that's a story for another day.
And yeah, you can follow Dylan on Twitter at DylanSports1. Anything else you want to share with the folks, Dylan?
Big D Podcast, Spunky Spectrum Sports. Wait to hear my rant on the Bears this week. Oh, gosh.
I mean, thank you for sharing a bit of a preview with it here. But yeah, it's a good preview to go check out all of Dylan's content. And Gladys, at Gladys L. Tyler, I know you do some things with Going for Two Live. You got the Thursday night, what is this? Fecal Matter show on the Thursday night, which now is a preview show. You're going to go at 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
time?
Mountain time. The only time that matters. Mountain time.
And yeah, I know you do some other writing for some other sites as well, as in addition to Going for Two.
Yeah, every now and then. I do a sleeper article for Gridiron, and apparently I'm back doing the start sit for Going for Two, which will start again. Trevor Lawrence hasn't won a game since Thanksgiving.
Now, is this American Thanksgiving or Canadian Thanksgiving? Because it would be worse if it was Canadian Thanksgiving, because that's before Halloween. So
Jamie is Canadian now, so it's probably Canadian.
Yeah, so I'm guessing he hasn't won a game since before last Halloween. It's a verifiable fact. Check it up. Sorry, Dylan. But yeah, I mean, they were on what were they, 7-2, 8-2, 7-3, 8-3, something like that to start the season last year and missed the playoffs. So a collapse almost worse than the Cowboys, who actually made the playoffs with hope and then utterly flopped when they got there, which was hilarious. But yeah, I'm Kyle Senra, Packers fan extraordinaire, as I just talked about a Packers playoff win, even though the Packers aren't playing tonight. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about tonight. But glad to do this Bills, Jags, Bengals, Commanders doubleheader preview with my co-host Gladys and with our great guest, Dylan Schmittler. So thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Gladys. Thank you, Jamie, for joining us in the chat. Our former co-host and contributor here, Dan, as well, joining us in the chat, sharing his props and picks. Check out Dan's show several times per week. His show does several shows that drop through the week on the Going for Two Live network. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Watch all the great shows and content we have. And guess what, Gladys? You and I will be back here next Monday on the